Did you know there is a neighborhood on Chicago's West Side where residents face a documented 1 in 20 chance of becoming a victim of violent crime every single year? Not historically, not in a bad decade, but right now, this year, according to FBI data published by Neighborhood Scout. And it sits less than 4 miles from Millennium Park, or that the most photographed road in Chicago, the road that appears in every tourism campaign, every architecture reel, every lakefront sunset posted to social media from this city, is also the single deadliest road in Chicago by fatalities per year. And that fact is sitting in the city's own public data portal, available to anyone, mentioned by no one. Chicago sits at the intersection of ambition and abandonment. It is a city that built the first skyscraper, reversed the flow of its own river, hosted a World's Fair that killed dozens of people in a hotel specifically designed for murder, and produced more Nobel laureates in economics than most countries. Most people know the skyline. Most people drive the lakefront, eat the pizza, take the architecture boat tour, and leave. Nobody tells them which streets recorded more crashes in a single year than some states record in a decade, or which neighborhoods have a violent crime rate that exceeds the threshold at which the United States State Department issues travel advisories for foreign cities. So settle in, because we are counting down 13 Chicago locations you should never stop while driving, and what we saved for last is documented, devastating, and has never been fully explained. Coming in at number 13, the neighborhood with a 1 in 20 chance. West Garfield Park sits on Chicago's west side, bounded by the Eisenhower Expressway to the south and the Green Line elevated tracks overhead. You can drive through it in 6 minutes. Those 6 minutes are doing a lot of work. According to Neighborhood Scout data cited by Guardian Protection Services in their 2026 analysis of Chicago community safety, West Garfield Park has a violent crime rate of 2,466 per 100,000 residents. That is 357% higher than the Chicago average, which is itself already 67% higher than the national average. Do the compounding math. West Garfield Park's violent crime rate lands at 869% above the national baseline. Residents face a documented 1 in 20 chance of becoming a victim of violent crime in a single calendar year. That means on a block of 20 houses, statistics say one of those households gets touched by violent crime this year. On a street of 40 houses, the number doubles. This is not a projection. This is the documented historical rate from FBI uniform crime data. Over the past 5 years, according to Amber Student's 2026 analysis of Chicago Police Department records, West Garfield Park has recorded nearly 1,000 shooting incidents, roughly 1 shooting every other day, sustained for 60 months. Gang organizations, including the Four Corner Hustlers, are documented as operating in the area by Chicago Police Department records. The 4 square mile neighborhood has a population of approximately 13,000 people, 1 shooting every other day. That is not a crime wave. That is a documented pace, and it has been that pace for 5 years. At number 12, the most beautiful road in Chicago will also kill you. Here's what Hollywood never told you about DuSable Lakeshore Drive. The road appears in every Chicago tourism image ever taken. It runs 15.3 miles along the lakefront. It has no traffic lights. It frames the skyline perfectly. And it is the single most deadly road in Chicago by driving-related fatalities. Not Western Avenue, not Pulaski, not the expressways. Lakeshore Drive. According to Power Rogers Law Firm's 2024 analysis of the Chicago Data Portal. In 2025, the northbound lanes of Lakeshore Drive alone recorded 5 fatalities, the highest single-direction fatality count of any road segment in the city that year, according to Briskman and Briskman Law Firm's analysis of Chicago crash data. The incidents are documented. November 2025, near Oakwood Boulevard, 2 people killed on scene in a single collision. January 2026, near Soldier Field, 1 dead, 4 injured. November 2024, at the 5200 block, 20-year-old Deja Palmer, driving northbound in the southbound lane, killed in the resulting crash. An earlier incident near 31st Street, 2 people dead when a lane-changing Chevrolet pushed a Nissan sedan into a tree. The road has no traffic signals. When something goes wrong at speed on Lake Shore Drive, there is nothing to slow it down. The city knows this. The data portal publishes it monthly. Nobody puts it on the postcard. If the most famous road in Chicago is also the deadliest road in Chicago, and nobody told you that, maybe this channel is worth 3 seconds of your time. Subscribing is free. And unlike DuSable Lake Shore Drive at 2 in the morning, it carries essentially no fatality risk. Hit subscribe. We will be here when you get back. The most photographed road in Chicago is the most deadly road in Chicago. One of those facts is in every tourism brochure. The other one is in the public record. Fact 11, the neighborhood where the numbers stop feeling abstract. Englewood sits on Chicago's south side, bounded by State Street to the east and Western Avenue to the west, with a population of approximately 24,369 people. Nearly 60% of those residents are under the age of 30. The per capita income of Englewood residents, according to U.S. Census Bureau data cited by Neighborhood Scout, is lower than 98.5% of all United States neighborhoods. Not lower than 98.5% of Chicago neighborhoods. Lower than 98.5% of every neighborhood in the country. In 2023, Englewood recorded 30 fatal shooting deaths, placing it in the top 3 neighborhoods in Chicago for fatal gun violence, according to the Traces analysis of Chicago Police Department records. 30 fatal shootings in 1 year in a community of 24,000 people projects to a homicide rate of approximately 123 per 100,000 residents. The United States national homicide rate is 6.3 per 100,000. Englewood's documented rate is roughly 19 times higher. According to Neighborhood Scout data published by Movoto, the neighborhood's overall crime rate runs 125% higher than the Chicago average, with 36 violent crimes per 1,000 residents annually. 19 times the national homicide rate, in a neighborhood where 60% of residents are under the age of 30. The poverty is not a footnote. The poverty is the explanation. Those two facts do not exist independently of each other, and the city of Chicago has had decades to sit with that. Landing at number 10, the street that never stops crashing. Western Avenue stretches 23 miles through the Chicago metropolitan area, running from Howard Street at the Evanston border south to the city limits at 119th Street. In 2024, according to the Chicago data portal published by the Chicago Department of Transportation's 2025 Traffic Crashes Annual Report, Western Avenue recorded 3,104 crashes, more than any other street in the city, resulting in 717 injuries and 2 fatalities. 3,104 crashes on one street in 1 year equals more than 8 collisions every single day of the year. 1 crash every 2 hours and 54 minutes, around the clock, 365 days a year. That is the documented pace of destruction on Chicago's longest road. For context, in 2024, the Chicago Department of Transportation recorded 112,000 total crashes across the entire city, the third highest annual total since the city began recording data in 2015, producing 25,692 injuries, the highest injury count in the city's recorded history. Western Avenue accounted for nearly 3% of all crashes in the entire city on its own. It runs through neighborhoods the architecture tour does not stop in. It runs through communities that have never appeared in a Chicago tourism campaign. The most dangerous street in Chicago is not where anyone looking at the skyline thinks it is. At number 9, the most dangerous square mile. Washington Park occupies roughly 2 square miles on Chicago's south side with a population of 12,707 people. According to Property Club's 2024 analysis of FBI Uniform Crime Report data and Neighborhood Scout statistics, Washington Park has a violent crime rate 701% higher than the national average and an overall crime rate 297% higher than the national average. Per capita, no neighborhood in the city of Chicago produces more violent crime incidents, 701% above the national baseline. The national violent crime average is approximately 366 incidents per 100,000 people. A rate 701% above that number projects to approximately 2,932 violent crimes per 100,000 residents. For reference, the U.S. State Department issues travel advisories for foreign cities that approach rates above 2,000 per 100,000. Washington Park's documented rate clears that threshold. The main campus of the University of Chicago sits approximately 3 miles away in Hyde Park. The University of Chicago has produced more Nobel laureates than most countries. It appears in every ranking of American academic institutions. Washington Park, 3 miles from its front gate, holds the highest violent crime concentration of any neighborhood in Chicago. One of those facts is in every admissions brochure. The other one is in the FBI crime data. Before we get to the numbers that are even harder to sit with, there is something coming at the end of this list that you need to be prepared for. 15,000 people used to live 2 miles from the Gold Coast, and when the city was finished with them, nobody could tell you where they went. That story is number 1. Stay with us. Coming in at number 8, the road where the study is still ongoing. Pulaski Road runs 39 miles north to south through Chicago, passing through the northwest side, the west side, the southwest side, and the far southwest side, through North Lawndale, through Austin, through Englewood. In 2024, according to the Chicago Data Portal, Pulaski Road recorded 2,755 crashes, 723 injuries, and 5 fatalities. 723 people injured on one road in 1 year is the capacity of a sold-out Chicago Symphony Orchestra hall injured on a single street in a single 12-month period. In 2023, Safe Roads USA documented 60 serious accidents on Pulaski Road, causing 4 deaths and 97 injuries, a pace that has not materially improved year over year. Pulaski passes through documented school zones where pedestrian fatalities involving children have been recorded. While the Chicago Department of Transportation has been conducting a Cicero Avenue corridor study, examining infrastructure and safety upgrades on roads adjacent to Pulaski, no equivalent comprehensive redesign plan for the most dangerous sections of Pulaski Road itself has been completed as of 2025. The city is studying roads near Pulaski. Pulaski had 523 more injuries in 2024 than the roads included in that study. The study is still ongoing. Fact 7, the largest crime zone in Chicago. I have read the Chicago Police Department's annual crime summaries for Austin going back 15 years. And I cannot tell you, there is a point where the numbers look like they are heading somewhere better. Austin sits on Chicago's west side with a population of approximately 69,839 residents, the largest neighborhood in the city by population. In 2022, according to Property Club and Suburbs 101's analysis of Chicago Police Department data, Austin recorded 5,051 crimes, more than any other neighborhood in the city, a 19% increase from 2021. 5,051 reported crimes in one neighborhood in 1 year equals 13.8 crimes every single day. Before accounting for the crimes that go unreported, Austin's raw annual crime total is higher than the entire annual crime count of most Illinois cities outside Chicago. The neighborhood has a violent crime rate of 1,781 per 100,000 residents. Chicago's former top police commander, a man whose job was to know these numbers better than anyone, a man who grew up in Austin, has publicly stated, according to community reporting by FingerLakes1.com, that he refuses to allow visiting family members, including his grandchildren, to set foot on the childhood streets he grew up on. That is not a statistic. That is a personal statement from a man who spent his career inside these numbers and decided the numbers are not in his family's favor. Even Austin's numbers do not prepare you for what the city of Chicago did to 15,000 people on the north side over 11 years. Entry number 1, keep watching. At number 6, the death corridor nobody named. Halsted Street runs from Lakeview in the north, through the South Loop, through Bridgeport, through the far south side, passing through residential blocks, commercial strips, and industrial zones with no consistent design standard across its entire length. In 2024, according to Power Rogers law firm's analysis of the Chicago data portal, Halsted Street recorded 6 driving-related fatalities, 2,089 total crashes, and 603 injuries. 6 fatalities placed it second only to DuSable Lake Shore Drive for deadly streets in Chicago that year. In 2023, Safe Roads USA documented 50 serious accidents on Halsted, resulting in 8 fatalities and 77 injuries, a higher per-crash fatality rate than most other major Chicago streets in the same period. 6 people killed on one street in 1 year, 8 the year before. Halsted Street killed more drivers in 2024 than the entire city of Galena. Illinois recorded homicides in the same period, second place behind Lakeshore Drive. Nobody is calling Halsted Street a crisis. The data already has. Landing at number 5, what a city does to a neighborhood over 50 years. Here's what nobody taught you about North Lawndale. The neighborhood sits on Chicago's west side with a population of 34,794 people. According to Property Club's 2024 analysis of Chicago Police Department and U.S. Census Bureau data, approximately 70% of men aged 17 to 45 in North Lawndale have criminal records. Not 70% have prior contact with police. Not 70% have misdemeanor histories. 70% of men in that age range, in that neighborhood, have criminal records. That is not a crime statistic about individuals. That is a description of a community where contact with the criminal justice system has become statistically normal, where the man who has not been processed by the system is the exception, not the other way around. North Lawndale experienced significant population displacement during the 1960s and 1970s, followed by near-complete economic collapse during and after the 2008 recession. Its violent crime rate remains among the highest in Chicago. Its commercial investment is near absent across core residential blocks. The west side of Chicago is discussed in mainstream media in terms of highway access and commute corridors. What is actually happening inside North Lawndale is not part of that conversation. 70%. That number did not come from a single event. It came from 50 years of decisions made by people who did not live there. Coming in at number 4, the nightmare intersection the city cannot fix. The intersection of East 79th Street and South Stony Island Avenue on Chicago's south side is not, in most contexts, a famous place. It should be. According to a 2021 study by the Chicago Journal, in partnership with data visualization firm 1.21 Interactive, using crash records from the Chicago data portal, this intersection holds a collision risk index score of 293 out of a possible 300, the highest score of any intersection in Chicago. From 2018 to 2020, it recorded 196 crashes, 1 fatality, 9 serious injuries, and 42 additional injuries. That is 1 crash every 3.7 days at a single corner, not on a road, not on a stretch of highway, but at one specific point where 6 separate traffic flows converge and 3 CTA bus routes cross simultaneously. A study by Rubens and Kress law firm, citing National Highway Traffic Safety Administration data, identified this intersection as the single most dangerous in the state of Illinois. The Chicago Department of Transportation has formally designated the corridor surrounding it a high crash corridor. As of 2025, redesign plans for the intersection have been announced. They have not been completed. The crashes have not waited. At number 3, the corridor that keeps killing. 1.6 miles south of that intersection, 1.6 miles, sits east. 95th Street and South Stony Island Avenue ranked the second most dangerous intersection in Chicago by the same Chicago Journal and 1.21 Interactive Collision Risk Index study. Score, 229. But from 2018 to 2020, 160 crashes, 1 fatality, 44 total injuries. 2 intersections on the same street, 1.6 miles apart. Both in the top 2 most dangerous intersections in Chicago. Both in the top 2 most dangerous intersections in the state of Illinois. the Chicago Department of Transportation has formally designated the full stretch of Stony Island Avenue between 79th and 95th Streets as a high crash corridor. According to Salvi and Meyer Law Firm's 2025 analysis, crash rates along the corridor remained elevated through that year, with no completed infrastructure intervention across the full stretch. The city named it. The city measured it. The city has been watching it. 2 intersections, 1.6 miles apart, and the road between them has been labeled dangerous in official city documents, while the crashes have continued without interruption. That is the corridor, and the corridor has a date attached to it. Fact 2, January 23, 2020. On January 23, 2020, at the intersection of East 79th Street, South Stony Island Avenue, and South Chicago Avenue. The intersection the Chicago Journal would rank most dangerous in the city, and the NHTSA would rank most dangerous in Illinois. A pickup truck driver ran a red light at speed. The truck hit a taxi. The force of the impact pushed the taxi into a school bus stopped at the intersection. 4 people were killed. According to Duncan Law Group's citation of the pre-event crash data, the intersection had already recorded 121 crashes in the first half of 2019 alone, flagged in city planning documents before January 20th, 2020 arrived. The study that would formally rank this corner the most dangerous in the state was published the following year, using data that included the crash. The redesign, as of 2025, has been announced and not completed. The corner was dangerous the morning those 4 people drove through it. The data said so. The city had the data. Nobody changed the corner in time. We have one location left. It is not an intersection. It is not a street. It is a piece of ground on the north side of Chicago where 15,000 people lived, where the city let the buildings fall apart around them, where the towers were demolished one by one over 11 years, and where the land was then cleared for condominium development. The city called that a transformation, number 1. And finally, number 1, the ground where 15,000 people used to live. In 1942, the Chicago Housing Authority broke ground on the Francis Cabrini homes on Chicago's near North Side, a public housing project conceived as a model of what urban housing could be, targeted at veterans returning from the war and mixed-income residents who needed stable shelter in a growing city. By 1962, the William Green homes had been added, completing the Cabrini Green complex, 23 high-rise towers, a network of row houses, and a peak capacity of 15,000 residents bounded by Division Street to the north, Chicago Avenue to the south, Larrabee Street to the east, and Halsted Street to the west. The towers were 15 to 16 stories tall. At their peak, they housed 15,000 people in a neighborhood that sat 2 miles from the Gold Coast, 2 miles from some of the most expensive real estate in the state of Illinois. The Chicago Housing Authority neglected the properties for years. Buildings deteriorated, services collapsed. By 1970, according to Britannica's documented historical record of Cabrini Green, 2 Chicago Police Department officers were shot and killed by a sniper operating from inside one of the buildings. That event established Cabrini Green as a national symbol of public housing failure. The city responded with security initiatives, none of them held. By 1981, 37 shootings had occurred in the complex in the opening months of the year. Mayor Jane Byrne announced she would move in. She arrived with a full police escort and camera crews, took a unit in one of the towers, and lived there part-time for approximately 3 weeks before moving out. Crime levels were unchanged. Activist Marion Stamps, documented in All That's Interesting's historical account of Cabrini Green, compared Byrne's presence to colonization. The mayor left. The towers remained. By 1992, Cabrini Green had been through the crack epidemic. On October 13th of that year, 7-year-old Dantrell Davis was shot and killed by a sniper while walking to school, holding his mother's hand approximately 100 yards from his front door. He was 7 years old. He was holding his mother's hand. That calendar year, 1992, 942 people were murdered across Chicago, the deadliest year in the city's recorded crime history, dating back to 1957. According to City Journal's March 2023 report, public housing's most notorious failure. The Dantrell Davis killing catalyzed federal action. Politicians who had watched every previous reform attempt fail began to consider demolition. In 1995, the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development formally retook control of the Chicago Housing Authority due to documented financial and management scandals, according to Britannica. The CHA began tearing down the first deteriorated buildings. In 1999, under the Clinton administration's directive, HUD issued guidance to local housing authorities nationwide. Public housing projects with vacancy rates exceeding 10% were to be evaluated, and those too deteriorated for rehabilitation were to be demolished. The CHA announced its plan for transformation, a proposal to demolish all high-rise public housing in Chicago, reduce total units by 1/3, and offer housing vouchers to displaced residents for private market apartments. According to City Journal's citation of journalist Ben Austin's reporting for the New York Times, HUD had eliminated 50,000 units of public housing nationwide by 1999. In the decade that followed, that number doubled to 100,000. Cabrini Green was the first site of that experiment. The first tower came down in 2000. The last came down on May 3, 2011, 11 years after demolition began. Of the original 23 towers, 0 remain. 137 row house units from the original Francis Cabrini Homes footprint survived. According to the Hal Barron Project at the University of Illinois, those row houses have been boarded up and uninhabited for years. In 2019, the CHA announced plans to demolish the remaining row houses as well. As of this recording, they are still standing, boarded, silent, and scheduled. The land where the 23 towers stood is now occupied by mixed-income housing and retail development. Adjacent condominium developments have sold units at prices exceeding $1 million, according to Block Club Chicago's December 2021 report, Cabrini Green, a history of broken promises. The neighborhood has been gentrified. I have read every documented account of the CHA's plan for transformation, and I cannot tell you where the 15,000 people went. Dolores Wilson, one of the last residents to leave Cabrini Green, was documented by the In These Times coverage of the 70 Acres in America documentary as having been given 4 months to find a new home. She had to leave behind photographs, furniture, and 50 years of accumulated life. The CHA promised relocation. Residents report being abandoned or given vouchers that could not be used in the communities where they had built their lives. Block Club Chicago and In These Times document the absence of any comprehensive public accounting. The city has no complete record of where the 15,000 went. Nobody has published one. The buildings came down, the people didn't go anywhere the city could see, and the condominiums went up where the towers used to be. That is not a ghost story, that is a city plan.